Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. It is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2025. Have you ever thought about how God does not take credit for helping people? This last Friday would have been the worst and only airline traffic accident there in North Dakota. The only one involving a civilian aircraft. God didn't take credit for the multiple failures of what happened on Friday. The pilot didn't take credit for what nearly happened on Friday. He is a hero. SkyWest Flight, which is owned by Delta, Flight 3788 had to do a go-around with 76 passengers in an aggressive maneuver to avoid the B-52 bomber during the North Dakota State Fair flyover. Here's a Google map showing the Minot Airport and the North Dakota State Fair, or actually the fairgrounds. Yeah, there was multiple failures that could have resulted in North Dakota's very first passenger airline tragedy. This is so amazing. God and his angels, the pilot, yeah, they were amazing. The Minot, North Dakota airport doesn't have a radar, and the B-52 had its collision warning system turned off during this time. This would have been the worst air traffic accident in North Dakota. There has been no commercial airline crashes with fatalities that have occurred in North Dakota. The worst air accident in North Dakota happened in 1968, Northwest Airlines Flight 104. That one crashed near Fargo, which killed 12 to 13 passengers and crew during a training flight. The flight was conducting a touch-and-go landing for pilot training, a common practice for crew certification. And during the maneuver, the aircraft stalled due to improper flight configuration and low speed in instrumental meteorological conditions. The plane crashed into a field near the airport, killing 12 of the 13 occupants, 3 crew, 9 trainee observers, with 1 survivor, a crew member. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, determined that the probable cause was a pilot error, specifically the failure to maintain adequate airspeed and configure the flaps properly in icy conditions, leading to the stall. Currently, the tower there at the Minot Airport was built in 1976, and because of new upgrades for their terminal, the tower does not have view of the entirety of the 2 runways, or where people board and get off. Its view is obstructed. People that were on the SkyWest Flight 3788, which is operated by Delta, need to go home and give their loved ones a big hug and a kiss and write thank you notes to the pilot. Like I said, there was multiple failures that could have ended up in a devastating tragedy. Yeah, when you get up in the morning or sometime this afternoon or tonight, give thanks to God and all his angels. Delta Connection Flight DL 3788 was going from Minneapolis to Minot, North Dakota, and it had to perform an aggressive maneuver, a go-around, to avoid a U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratoforce plane during its landing approach there at the airport. The incident occurred between 6 and 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, coinciding with the B-52 flyover at the North Dakota State Fair. It was a pre-approved flight, approved by the FAA and Minot ATC. During the near miss, the MOT tower, likely staffed, was probably only staffed maybe 1 to 2 controllers, probably only 1, as a SkyWest pilot noticed the tower failure to warn the B-52. It suggests limiting staff and no radar to detect the military aircraft. The tower relies on visual observations and communication with Minot approach, handled by Minneapolis ARTCC, or MIBS RAPCON, indicates minimal staffing at the time of this almost tragic accident. The civilian pilot reported being surprised by the B-52 presence, as the Minot contract ATC tower, operating under visual flight rules without radar, failed to warn of the military aircraft. Thank God no collision occurred and the flight landed safely with 76 passengers and 4 crew members unharmed. The FAA, SkyWest, and Air Force are supposedly investigating. Well, I found all this information about the failures that occurred leading up to this near accident, this near tragic event. More than likely, they only had one controller at the time and 2 planes in the sky, maybe 3. SkyWest Flight 3788, an Embracer E-175, was descending from 34,000 feet towards the Minot International Airport when crew spotted a B-52 bomber on a converging course. Have to excuse the noise, sounds like the neighbors mowing their lawn. The pilot executed a go-around, sharply banking right, climbing 2,000 feet and circling before landing safely. Only one controller and no radar. This is a very dangerous situation. In a video recorded by passenger Monica Green and shared on Instagram and TikTok, the pilot announced, "For those on the right side, you probably saw the plane kind of sort of coming at us. Nobody told us about it. ATC said turn right, and I said there's a plane over there, and he says turn left. Given its speed, it was a military plane. I don't know how fast they were going, but they were a lot faster than us. I felt it was the safest thing to turn behind it. So sorry about the aggressive maneuver, he said. It caught me by surprise, and this is not normal at all."
For those of you on the right-hand side, you probably saw the airplane kind of sort of coming at us. Nobody told us about it, and so we continued, and air traffic. There's no radar here, so the tower is controlled, the tower does everything visually, and so they said report about 6 miles from the airport. So we did that. I think he realized that the spacing wasn't going to work, and he said turn right. And I looked over, and there was an airplane, which those of you on the right-hand side, I thought it was a small airplane like the one you see at the airport right now doing touch and goes. And he said turn right. I said there's an airplane over there, and he says turn left. And then by the time we read back to clearance, looked over and saw the airplane that was kind of coming on a converging course with us. And so given his speed, it was a military, I don't know how fast they were going, but they were a lot faster than us. I felt it was the safest thing to do to turn behind it. So sorry about the aggressive maneuver. It caught me by surprise. This is not normal at all. I don't know why they didn't give us a heads up, because the Air Force Base does have radar, and nobody said, hey, there's also a B-52 in the pad or anything. Long story short, it was not fun, but I do apologize for it, and thank you for understanding. It was not a fun day at work. So have a nice evening, and glad you're safe.
So what was the B-52 activity? The B-52 was from the Minot Air Force Base, 5th Bomb Wing, and was conducting a flyover for the North Dakota State Fair as part of the Great American Defense Community event, and it was approved by the FAA and Minot ATC. The Air Force stated the B-52 crew was instructed to fly 2 miles westbound after the flyover, but Minot ATC did not advise them of the inbound SkyWest Flight. The Minot International Airport, MOT, adjacent to the North Dakota State Fairgrounds, and 5 miles from Minot Air Force Base. The fairgrounds proximity southwest of MOT places the B-52 flyover path near the SkyWest Flight's approach from Minneapolis. Now, the Minot, North Dakota airport is considered a Class D airport operating under VFR. It has no radar, relying on visual separation by a contract company, non-FAA controllers. The lack of radar likely contributed to the failure to warn the SkyWest pilot. The Air Force noted that Minot Approach Control and MOT Tower were informed of the flyover, but communication broke down as the tower did not alert the B-52 crew about the commercial flight. And to add on to what happened, the B-52 likely had its ADS-B disabled, a common military practice for non-combat missions, preventing the SkyWest pilots' TCAS, which is Traffic Collision Avoidance System, or ADS-B receivers from detecting it. Like I said, it was an act of God, and God is not taking credit, but an act of God that prevented this almost very tragic incident, and the pilot being, on the toes, being aware, watching what's going on around him. Neither God nor the pilot took credit for this close call. The go-around delayed the landing by a couple of minutes as the pilot circled and reapproached. U.S. Representative Betty McCollum called for radar installation there at the Minot International Airport and better FAA and DoD coordination, citing serious questions about passenger safety. The Air Force said it was looking into the matter. Yeah, I really don't think anything's going to be done. Back in 2002, I believe it was November, there was a bill that was presented to upgrade the airport, build a new tower, because like I said, the tower they have right now, the runways are obstructed by the new terminal that they built there. And even if a new tower had been approved back in 2022, it would have been probably 10 years before a new tower would have been built. They need something that's taller with better visibility of the runways and the other features there. Many of you may remember the January 29th crash between American Airlines regional jet and a U.S. Army black helicopter near Reagan National Airport. There has been 10 near misses involving military aircraft at Reagan since 1987. Yeah, so that shows you what the risk is. This recent incident there at the Minot Airport reinforces calls for mandatory ADS-B out for military flights. Yeah, but they had theirs turned off. And because it was more likely turned off, it contributed to the undetected convergence. So Minot, North Dakota is what's called a Class D airport, small to medium size, with a control tower and no radar, handling maybe 10 to 15 commercial flights daily from Delta Connection, United Express, and Allegiant Air. Plus, they got the general aviation and charters that come into the airport. It serves 301,000 passengers annually as of 2023 statistic, making it North Dakota's third busiest airport. Third busiest airport, no radar. And often, maybe only one or two people working in the control tower. But the problem with that is they also control what's going on at the ground. They're multitasking. And to make it even worse, the Minot, North Dakota airport is operated by a private contractor, not FAA employees, and it's open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. local time. So from 11 p.m. to, say, 7 a.m., there is no one working in the towers. No one. So would you be taking a midnight flight to Minot, North Dakota, or even have a stopover there to transfer to another plane, going to another location? Do they have what's called a red eye, midnight flights in and out of that area? I didn't look into that. A lot of other things I did look into. but not that. Maybe one of you might know. Put your comment down below. I certainly wouldn't take a red-eye flight if it was available. Yeah, and knowing now that the military is turning off their collision detection systems, turning them off. Another thing they're not telling you is that the Minot Air Force Base, MIB, 10 miles north, home to the 5th Bomber Wing, the B-52s, complicates airspace coordination. To be considered a Class D tower at airports like Minot, daily operations have moderate traffic, anywhere between 30 to 40 flights, including 15 commercial flights per day. Typically, a Class D tower has anywhere between 1 to 3 controllers working simultaneously during operational hours. But they're multitasking. They manage runway operations, takeoff and landings, ground control, handle taxiway movements, which they can't see, clearance delivery, issues flight clearances, things like that. These positions, these jobs, are often combined into 1 or 2 controllers during low traffic periods. And this is what happened at the Reagan National Airport crash on January 29th of this year. There was 1 controller handling 2 different roles. No one's talking about that. They talk about the loss of life, but they're not talking about the fact that they only had 1 controller in the tower at the time of that crash with the military helicopter. Only 1 controller. So more than likely, on the July 18th near-miss incident there, the tower was likely staffed only by probably 1, maybe 2 controllers, as the SkyWest pilot noted the tower's failure to warn of the B-52. And it suggests limited staffing and no radar to detect the military aircraft. The contract tower's reliance on visual observation and communication with Minot approach, which was handled by Minneapolis ARTCC or MIB's RAPCON, indicates, they had minimal staffing. Class D or Class Delta airspace is one of the 6 classes of controlled airspace. The FAA defines Class D airspace, saying general Class D airspace extends upward from the surface to 2,500 feet above the airport elevation. The difference between Class D airspace as opposed to Class B or Class C airspace is that the primary airport in Class D has a control tower that provides weather reporting but does not provide radar service. Also noted that while an operating control tower usually is indicative of at least a Class D airspace, there are few airports with operating control towers that are not considered Class D because they do not provide weather reporting services. So this incident also indicates that whoever was working in the control tower had multiple roles during the flyover. They were likely working at one time during the 6 to 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time incident. And this is evidently normal for Class D towers. This incident also suggests understaffing or coordination failure, as a single controller may have been overwhelmed, especially with the B-52's likely disabled ADS-B, preventing the collision control detection from seeing it or recording it. I've talked about this before, how the FAA faces a 3,000 controller shortage nationwide, with 70% of staffing targets filled at major airports, and many towers, such as Austin or Newark, operating with less than 60% certified controllers. Controllers usually work 10-hour shifts 6 days a week, increasing fatigue and errors. But its small size there at Minot suggests that they probably have only 10 total controllers at any given time that would be put on the work schedule, with 1 to 2 people per ship, similar to other Class D towers. I bet you didn't know that Nashville was a Class D tower. It's like, oh my Lord. And because Minot Airport is a non-FAA tower, MOT staffing is managed by a private firm, which may face similar shortages, but lacks the FAA's direct hiring pipeline. No wonder so many of them are quitting. Evidently, between 2023 and 2024, the FAA only hired about 1,800 new controllers. So what are your thoughts? Yeah, I would look to see if where I'm flying into could possibly be a Class D tower. This is like, God and his angels and that pilot, give them thanks. Give them big hugs, high fives, thank you letters. Tell your family you are so lucky to be home. So what are your thoughts? Put your comments down below. Please stay safe. Watch where you're flying in and out of. And I'll talk to you later. God bless you. Bye.